Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. How's everyone this morning?
Good.
Ready or not, we're moving right into spring and the first part of summer, aren't we?
Yeah.
Isn't it great? Are you loving this weather? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's great to be with you this morning. So the other day, I think it was Thursday morning, it was about 5:30, and I was sound asleep, and the phone rings. And you know how you kind of wake up, you're not sure whether you're sleeping or you're awake, or is this a dream or what, you know, that place. And I picked up the phone and I said, hello, and I heard this frantic voice on the other side saying, I think my husband is dead, can you come over? And this was one of the members of the church and calling me from Clinton, and I was been house sitting in Kirkland this week, so I wasn't on the island. And so I said, well, I can, but I can't get there right away. Have you called 911? Yes, they're here. Okay. And so let's hang up, and I'll call a couple people to come over and be there with you. So I did, and they did, and so I got it all together and managed to get to the ferry and got over there, and indeed, her husband had passed. And this is the third member of our congregation who has passed since January. So he had he had several types of cancer now. He'd had, I don't know how many rounds of chemo, and he was about to start another round tomorrow. And as it turns out, his stepdaughter and grandson had come to visit this past week, and they took them to the airport to go back home on Wednesday morning. And then Wednesday afternoon, when they were coming back, he said, let's don't just go home, let's go to my favorite restaurant for dinner, which was Arnie's in Mukilteo. That was his favorite restaurant. So they went to the restaurant for dinner. They had a lovely dinner, and then they came home and had a quiet evening, and they went to bed, and he slipped away during the night. They'd been married 44 years. And so I'm sitting with her, and she's, of course, is in shock. And every so often she would say, he's gone. He's gone. And it would start over again, you know. And then, after a period of time, she said, oh, we don't have to do chemo again. And then she felt immediately guilty for thinking that. And I said, dear one, don't you understand? That's exactly what he's done, is freed you both from that. And I actually put the call into Seattle Cancer Center to tell them what had happened and to cancel all the appointments for this coming week and everything. And so, bless her heart, she would go back and forth from the shock of it and then the awareness that the suffering was over. And she went back and forth all day. And I trust that this morning, which it's been, 4 days now, I'm sure it's still happening. And it will for a while. And the reason I start out with that this morning is I want to talk a little bit today about the idea that and we've talked about this a little bit before, in Conversations with God, where God tells Neil, I send only miracles. That's all I got. I don't have anything else. I send only angels. That's all I've got. I don't have anything else. And those of us here on the receiving end may beg to differ a little bit with that once in a while, don't you think? I'm not so sure. I don't know that I'd call that a miracle. Angel was not the first word that came to my mind. You know people like that. You've had those experiences in your life. So how in the world can God say, I only send miracles? That's all I have is miracles. That's all there is. I took a little bit out of the book where Neil and God is having this conversation. God says, there's no such thing as bad luck. Nothing happens by accident. There are no coincidences, and God doesn't make mistakes. Neil says, in other words, everything is perfect just the way it is. God says, that's right. And Neil says, even if things don't look perfect, God says, especially if they don't look perfect. That's a sure sign that there's something huge for you to remember here. So you're saying we should be grateful for the worst things that happen to us? God says, gratitude is the fastest form of healing. What you resist persists. What you are grateful for can then serve you as it was meant to do. I have told you, I have sent you nothing but angels, and now I will add, I have given you nothing but miracles. Wars are miracles. Crimes are miracles. Diseases and illnesses are miracles. God says, well, what do you think? If you were beginning to give answers rather than ask all the questions, what would you say? And Neil says, you mean what would I say if I were you? God says, yes. Neil says, I say every event of life is a miracle, as is life itself. Life is designed to provide your soul with the perfect tools, the perfect circumstances, the perfect conditions with which to realize and experience, announce and declare, fulfill and become who you really are. Therefore, judge not and neither condemn. Love your enemies, pray for your persecutors, and embrace every moment and circumstance of life as a treasure, a perfect gift from a perfect creator, I would say. Seek results and outcomes, but do not require them. And God said, you would have spoken well, my friend. And so here's the thing, because it feels really important these days where the world in the climate that we're living in is filled with judgment and condemnation. The idea of being loving to one another, loving our neighbor, feels kind of silly and trite in that environment, doesn't it? And so as conscious beings, it's really important for us to get what's going on and making a conscious decision how to be in the midst of it. Who am I in relationship to this climate that we're living in? Who am I? And I look at what's going on in the world and I'm going, miracles? Angels? But the truth is, it's a wake-up call to remind us who we really are. It's not about, even if there's a whole lot of energy trying to convince us otherwise, it's merely the opportunity for us to remember the truth. Remember the truth of who we are as love, as light, as God in form, as the divine in expression. Do you think the divine is put off by all this? No. No. Do you think the divine, it wavers in all of this? No. No. Why not? Because the divine understands what's happening here. The divine understands who we are, always did know who we are. That's why there's no judgment from the divine. Ooh. What's to judge? The divine knows who we are. There's no mystery there. There's nothing to prove. There's nothing to weigh. The issue is us remembering that and claiming that in the midst of a climate that feels like it's everything but that. Does that make sense? Questions or comments about that?
It brings up something that I've really been dealing with since Easter, when my car got totaled, and it's that whole thing of love is letting go of fear, the whole Course in Miracles, and that whole thing of struggling with yeah, but, and I'm just sitting here going like, how much versus divine self that's in love, how much the ego is in fear going, yeah, but what if, as far as maybe helping the other person on my insurance. So.
Yeah, the yeah buts show up. You know, it's very easy to stand up here and declare all this, and the yeah buts show up in the midst of the situation. On that day in Clinton, when I went over there to sit with our dear one, who had just lost her husband, believe me, I was not sharing any platitudes about the divine says it's all perfect. Who wants to hear that in that moment? Even though it's true, the truth of it is still true. But that's not the moment. That's not the moment to say, well, now all the suffering is gone and it's the best thing to happen and everything. It's all true, but is that the moment to say it? No. The best thing we can do as conscious beings in love and light is just to sit with the person. Allow them to be where they are. Let them be where they are. Because where they are is exactly where they need to be. And they will wander around, back and forth, until at some point it starts to be more this way and less that way. And it takes as long as it takes. The yeah buts show up. Like I said, in the first moment, you could see this shift in her face when she suddenly realized there's no more having to go to Seattle for chemotherapy. And instantly the guilt came in. Phew, well, I can't feel that. I can't feel that relief. That's not okay. And in reminding her, yes, Jamie.
I was just going to say, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, what helps me in that instant is to see us, we're all just characters in this dream, and we're actually at home with God, at peace. So,
yes.
No matter what's happening out here, that's the truth.
Indeed. Indeed. And before I had made it to the ferry that morning, I went into a bit of prayer and meditation, and I had this vision, and I saw him making his transition, and there were these angels there, and one of them reached out and handed him his favorite beer and said, "Welcome home." And I told her that. She loved it. We laughed and cried together. Yeah. Indeed. Welcome home. But in the moment, what we're dealing with is stuff. The yeah buts show up. Yeah, but. And what we can do as conscious beings is we have to deal with the circumstance or the situation, whatever it is. But and we're going to feel what we feel, whether it's shock or pain or like having the car totaled. There's shock. There's all kinds of shock. Oh my God! And what do we do now? And the ego hates the unknown. Doesn't like anything it doesn't have files on. So it's going to make whatever that is wrong. To be afraid, to condemn, whatever, because it doesn't like what it doesn't know, and your car totaled, it doesn't know. Okay, now what? Or my friend who's now beginning a life after 44 years in a whole new way. What is that? Living with someone for 44 years and now they're gone. In the grief class that I teach, I tell people, so you think about this, as big as the loss of the person is, just as big is the loss of identity, of who am I now in this life, in this world. I'm not a wife anymore. I'm not a husband anymore. I'm not a father anymore. I'm not a daughter anymore. What am I? How do I do this now? I've been doing it in a certain way, in a partnership for 44 years. Now what? What do you think the ego thinks of that? So the opportunity in consciousness that we have is to see what we can do in the moment as we're feeling what we're feeling. Is that as the guilt comes up, as the confusion comes up, as the doubt comes up, because what we tend to do is go to guilt, judgment, resentment, don't we? Am I right about that?
Yep.
And that energy is all wasted energy. Do you get that? But in our world, in the climate we live in, it's normal. Or we think it's normal. It's become normal. But it's not the truth of us. And if we can get past that, if we can get out from under it, if we can recognize it as soon as possible and don't judge ourselves for how long it takes to get it. Maybe it takes a minute, an hour, a week, a month, a year. It takes as long as it takes. But what you and I can do is practice the truth of us moment to moment, day to day. That gets stronger in us. So then at the moment, at the time when we need it, it may show up or surface a little sooner. Questions or comments about that? Yeah, David.
Because one of the things that keeps coming through in consciousness and that whole love and fear thing has to do with putting myself in the other person's place, which was obviously their fault. But to thinking of them, and I don't think they have, insurance on a car or whatever, and starting to think of them helps me in the situation because the insurance company wants to give me less than half of what my car is valued at. And so I'm struggling with that. But on the other side, up until that point, I was thinking of how could I help them if it wouldn't damage my insurance too much to help them. And that helped me. So then I'm thinking about putting myself in their place, and it could be a lot worse when there's not insurance to cover. So it's that struggle, but it comes in, but what is that gonna cost me? And
Because all those circumstances coming in are part of the fear and doubt and the but it keeps us into being the size of the circumstances. And remember, we've talked about that. When we squeeze ourselves down to the size of the circumstances, it's painful. It hurts. It doesn't feel good.
But it's that I send only miracles. The good news, this morning, that's why I was even late, because I was on the phone with somebody that I may have found a comparable car that is actually half of the money that same car would cost us at the end of my street right now. And so I shifted this morning saying, okay, this may work out on this side if they won't come through on the other side. So I send only miracles is that when one door closes, another.
Absolutely. And when we remember that we're more than these circumstances, that we're bigger than these circumstances, then we encapsulate the circumstances, and we're larger than, we're opening the doors and windows to more possibilities. We're opening the door to the next steps that are going to serve us, that are going to bring us the healing, the support, the whatever. That in this moment of now, we have no idea. We have no idea that was available or a possibility. But we have to allow ourselves and support ourselves to getting into that flow. Because it's hard to be in that flow when we're feeling just the pain and suffering and the but energy, right? And this is important to get because our world at large is swimming in this stuff. And see, it's that we talk about that what is it, the mouse on the wheel that goes around and around, is that if we're holding ourselves in the circumstances, we just know ourselves through the circumstances, It's a negative place to be. And from that negativity, we draw to us more circumstances that keep us there, right?
Right.
And so it just fortifies that belief that there's nothing past this, because that's all we keep seeing. And so it goes like this, right? And that's what makes it tough to get out of, because that path gets worn. It gets tough to get off the worn path. Remember when you were a kid riding your bike? Maybe you still do this. Riding your bike. Remember when you're on the path, and if you get off the path, you can get thrown off the bike?
Yeah.
Because it's difficult to get off that, out of the groove, isn't it? Ooh, that hurts just thinking about it. But the truth is, we have to understand that what we can do is create a new groove to ride in. It's about knowing that we're more than this. Yeah, this is tough stuff. What my friend is going through at the church is tough stuff, toughest stuff. Is there anything tougher than that? I don't know. I'm sure she doesn't think so. But to remember that we are always more than this. That the truth is that He, dear one, has blessed them both by going on to the next life right now. She would say through the day, I thought we had another year. I thought we had at least another year. And I said, dear one, what a tough year that would have been. He didn't want that for either one of you. And as hard as this is, now your life is about creating that new groove, that new place. Is it easy? No.
It's not the issue.
No, right, exactly, Marilyn. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking of a quote from Course in Miracles. I can always choose to look at things differently. Yeah, so when the stuff comes up again, I don't have,
Exactly, and that's our power, isn't it? That's where our power lies, is how we're going to look at it, how we're going to deal with it. What's the choice we're going to make in this? Yes, it's hard. Oh my God, it's hard as hell.
That's staying there. That's staying in the stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
I also love to, I think this is funny. This isn't Course, but I think it's funny. I heard it, I think it was a bumper sticker. I'm not going to swear now, folks. A shift, S-H-I-F-T.
Happens.
Shift happens, yeah.
Indeed.
And then you're like, you know,
And that's looking
And
at it
laughter
from
and
that
joy help.
perspective, right? That we're more than this.
yeah.
That we're more than this circumstance. And like I said, it's not easy to know that in the midst of it, but if we're practicing it all the time, moment to moment, day to day, it becomes easier.
It ain't easy being green.
That's what, I just keep remembering years ago when Mary Van Morrissey, when she still had her church, and I remember she had these God cans. And they were like a little bank that you could write your problem down and put it through the slip, but you couldn't get it back out. And then the tape that went with it was all about my big God is bigger than my big problem.
And see,
And so
even
the
just,
God can,
right,
that God can.
the God, and that even putting it in, the action of putting the problem inside the can is part of encapsulating it. That physical action of reminding ourselves that we more, and certainly God is more than. If I have a hard time knowing I'm more, I know I can believe that God is more. I don't have any trouble with that. And when I get to the place where I understand that indeed I am more, because I am God in expression. I am God in the physical. Do you believe that?
Yes.
When you get out of the way.
When the yeah buts aren't louder. But we don't want to judge ourselves around that, because that defeats the purpose then. Yeah, we have our moments. We do. We all do. I'm not standing up here because I don't have those moments. Are you kidding me? Of course I do. That's why I share this with you. And for those of us who are dealing with caregiving situations, where we're taking care of someone else who is struggling, who is suffering, who is hurting, sometimes it's really hard to see past that because we love this person, and the thing we want the most is for them to cease hurting, to cease suffering. And we don't know what that looks like. We know what we want it to look like. But when we're praying for highest good can be that someone hits their bottom and moves up and moves on in a new life. It could also be what that looks like is transition, and they go on to the next life. Now, we're going to have a preference in this, aren't we? But what the situation is asking of us is to let it go into the hands of the divine. It isn't letting go to the winds for whatever happens. You're very specifically saying, I'm giving it to you, divine essence. I'm giving it to you, infinite presence, because you know what highest good is. You love me. You love this person. You love us. Show me, because I don't know what else to do. Show me. Take it. We are not asked to do this alone. That's the good news. There's something beautiful, endless, huge, that understands the whole picture. It is right there, ready to embrace you both. And the task that we have is to allow it. We can't say, well, I'll give it to you, but it's got to look like this, please. It's okay to say what your preference is, fine, but then you have to let it go for the highest good. Because spirit can't get in there if we have some of the doors and windows closed. Do you get that? You got to open them all, which means you've got to trust the process for the highest good, whatever that is. And we have to know that highest good is unfolding, whatever it is. Because nobody's lost in this. When we move on and make our transition from this life to the next, is that a tragedy? No. It's as natural as our next breath. But as I said, the ego doesn't like the unknown. Is there a bigger unknown than that? So we get scared, we fear when we talk about the tragedy of it. There's no tragedy here. This dear soul is moving from this life to the next. And what an amazing gift he has been while he was here. And we are so grateful that he was here. You're so grateful for that automobile that you had that served you for so long, or however long you've had it. Gratitude is the fastest form of healing. And so let's take a moment now to take a deep breath. These are big things we're talking about here. Are you breathing? Let's breathe. Let's breathe deeply. And let's, if it feels comfortable, close your eyes and just settle into where you're sitting and have an awareness of how that chair you're sitting in is supporting your physical body. It is, because if it wasn't, you'd be falling on the floor. And you're not. I don't hear anybody falling on the floor. So I'm assuming the chair's doing its job. And the floor, the chair is not falling through. Is there a basement here? The chair is not falling through to the basement, so I'm assuming the floor is doing its job too, of supporting the chair that you're sitting on. And there's no sinkhole here, so I'm assuming that the foundation is also doing its job of supporting this building that we're in. And the earth is supporting the ground, that's supporting the foundation, that's supporting the floor, that's supporting the chair, that's supporting you. Do you realize how you are supported in each moment of now? And how the universe is supporting it all. The planets, the solar system, the orbits the planets are on. This divine patterning, unfolding moment to moment, of which we're all a part. And transition is part of that patterning as well. And that's just one of the things that we're dealing with, that we're looking at, that we're holding, that's facing, that we're challenged with. There's many things. If you look at that thing, if you take one, put it in front of you and realize that you are more than this thing. That's not to diminish it. We're not diminishing it. That's not the point here. Of course it's important. Of course it's huge. Of course it's affecting you. And you're more than this circumstance. You are life itself. And with that awareness of being the life itself in physical form, breathe and know that you are, that God is, divine essence, infinite presence, whatever you name that essence, is more. And therefore, this thing, whatever it is unfolding in divine order. You understand this. You accept this. You embrace this because you know you and those you love, all of us, cannot be lost. Even in the worst of circumstances, that being, that soul, whoever's involved, is not lost. Even if their body's blown to smithereens, they're not lost. They move directly into the arms of infinite presence. No questions asked, no qualifiers. Their life, it's the only place to go. Breathe and allow. Know that whatever it is unfolding right now in divine order for the highest possible outcome. as we breathe. There may be someone you know who could really use this reminder right now. That whatever they're dealing with, they sure could use the reminder that they are more than this circumstance. That they are held by divine essence, which is infinitely more than this circumstance. And because we're all one, we can join our hearts and hold them with you. And if you'd like to say their name aloud right now, feel free. Candy.
Ralph.
Robert.
Amanda. Fun.
And for our community at large, our state, our country, our planet, that in this moment of now, as our hearts are aligned, all life is lifted up. God is calling. All life is lifted up. And for the opportunity to be reminded of this truth of us, we are indeed grateful. And so it is. Amen.